let's hear it for your Sydney Swans.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club.
So to all you loyal Swans out there, you just can't get enough of the red and the white.
Fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. G'day there, Singnets and Swanlings. Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods. You're joined as always by the crew from Sydney. I'm Noddy, together with Chris and Jen.
That's right, you lucky loyal Swans fans. Tonight we try to get our emotions in check as we dive into the preview against Port at the SCG this Friday night for a prelim final.
But before then, remember, if you enjoy what you hear, make sure to give us a like and a follow. Okay, let's kick things off with a quick overview of the game day details.
This coming Friday night in front of a sold-out crowd at the SCG, no doubt filled to the brim with the red and white faithful, our Sydney Swans will take on the Port Adelaide Power with first bounce at 7:40pm, with the winner booking a spot in the 2024 AFL Grand Final. All right, crew, off the top, how is everyone feeling? How are we going? Talk me through it.
I am full of a little bit of mixed emotions. I'm obviously very excited. I mean, it's finals footy, so here we come. We made it there. We had our little week off, so hopefully the lads are nice. They're firing. They've got all their engines lit up for this Friday night. But I'm definitely nervous. Obviously, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but after that last game, we want to forget about it against Port. They did give us a little bit of a hiding, so I am nervous about that. I did make an earlier prediction in our last little potty on there with you, Noddy, that I was worried about Port Adelaide. Yep. Just their game style, the way that they love to run and carry some of their bulls in the midfield, or one particular bull, and then the speed of Rosie and Butters and experience of Wines and blah, blah, blah. We can go on, but yep, I'm pretty excited because if we come out there and we can play with full heart and play with some grit and pressure, and unlike what Goring said the other day, and we only play with one quarter with Charlie Horsewater, if we can bring it for four quarters and everyone across the park plays their part and goes in there and pressure, takes their first option, believe in themselves, I reckon we'll get it over the line. So I'm excited.
I love it. How about you, Chris?
Mate, you were speaking to Jules and Sammy Boy, our Swan superfan Sam, last week on the post-game potty, where you asked them for 3 words of how they felt. Now, I'm going to go with the same thing, but in just anticipation of this game coming up. Excited as a fan, this is life. This is what we dream of. We want the big games. We want them at home. We want to be there for that. I'm so pumped about it. And I feel driven. And I don't know how anyone else there in Swans fans feel about this. This is all I can think about. Now, I have a full-time job. I have a house that I just moved into. I have a beloved fiance and a baby on the way. And the only thing that's going through my mind is a bloody prelim, okay? So don't tell her. She's out there running errands right now. So let's just leave that for now. But the other thing is history. And I think I'm going to touch on it right now, and I'm not going to talk about it for the rest of the potty. And I think we just leave it. There's a bit of history behind this. We had a bit of a bogey team called Collingwood for a long time there, and it was in the prelim in 2012 where we finally broke the hoodoo. That was there. That was a fantastic game. I almost punched on with a Swans fan. Totally different story altogether with, but there's history behind us as well. So I feel excited. I feel driven. There's history to go with this. I am feeling pumped about the game, mate. That's what I'm feeling.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty much in the middle of what you both just said there. It's funny when we're talking about, obviously facing up with Port, and it could have been Port or Hawthorn, obviously. And I think when we were talking last week with Sammy and Jules, and I think we all sort of said we'd rather play Hawthorn, even though they're in better form, just for this bogey team element. But if we do quickly look at the game that was played between Port and Hawthorn, it was a pretty tense affair. Obviously, Port bounced back after that massive smashing they got at the hands of the Cats the week before. Port won by 3 points, 75-72. Port really only won one quarter, so first quarter, which set up the game, obviously, and then Hawks won the next 3 quarters, obviously with Sicily a chance to win it in the dying moments, but hit the post, and then everything else. I mean, okay, so let's go back to you guys. Jen, were you able to watch the game? If not, did you see the highlights? What did you take away from it? Who was good for Port? I guess we can focus on Port now that we know that that's who we're playing. Just general impressions from that game.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch the whole game, but I did watch it back, and the thing that makes me nervous about it, exactly what you just said. Port won it off the back of that first quarter and then held their lead basically for the rest of the game, and Hawthorn, even though they did fight back, they did enough in that first quarter, and we have a little bit of a history with our own first quarters, although in that last game we did actually get closer with GWS in our first quarter, so we're moving in the right direction with that area. One of the big things I did notice with that Port game, obviously their ruck winning the hit out, so 55-39. Surprisingly though, the clearances were fairly equal, but I did notice that the ruck from Port, he loves to get a run and jump at it. And I did notice in the Geelong game, they didn't let him do that. They kind of got body on earlier, didn't let him get that run and jump. Because Port, they love that outside game. If he can get some purchase on that, their players like to run from the outside and they're so quick. They've got the speed. Unless it's Horne-Francis, when he comes in, they actually like to do that sneaky backwards tap, and he likes to sweep from behind and grab it from there and burst out of the side of the pack. So there's going to be some good matchups coming on, which we'll talk about later on. Port also beat Hawthorn at their own game in terms of contested possessions. They beat them by 17, and also those ground ball gets, they beat them by +8. Inside 50s, 51-42, and then again, just more marks inside that forward 50. But yeah, they've got some star players across the game. If you want to talk about who we're worried about with Port, I personally think their midfield is just super dangerous. So yeah, if that ruck gets them first access to the game, they're hard to shut down, and we've been having some issues in and around our centre field. We got it together in the fourth last week, but I was losing my mind about midway through the GWS game about our setups around the mids. Anyone who would listen to me, I was absolutely losing it about their setup. So I was just like, why are you not getting to the tap down point? Why are you not holding the triangle? Hold the piece of the pie. But
it was a drunken evening over there. The KMB were just describing everything with salt and pepper shakers. I do recall.
Oh no, yeah.
Pints and everything and wedges, and then everyone around you just going, "Oh my god, this is a masterclass!" Like we were just like, "Swans won, Jen's a god."
And then Jen had a very sore head the next morning. It was very, very fun.
Right back at you.
So, yeah.
Chris, so just without notice there, following on from Jen's comments, and they are bang on. The Port had a few players stand out in that game. Can you shout out a few that were good in that game and that we might be a bit worried? And we'll go through it later. But who's on your mind? Who's a bit of a concern?
I think it's quite funny with the way that you raised that question, because there was a few players that Jason Horne-Francis, I think, can just turn on a game as Jen was talking about there, and just the way that he plays with that speed. And he was doing exactly that. He was probably the most dangerous guy in pockets of that game, but he just absolutely fried his hammy. And you have to just imagine, I don't know where he's going to sit now, so I'll just leave that there. The other one was Rioli. I thought Rioli was unbelievable. And like, I think best on ground for scoring involvements. The guy was just the kicks, just the creativity and the kicks that he just nailed. That skill set and the effort to get to them was massive. And I think we're going to talk about some matchups later. We'll get into him. So he was perfect. Burgoyne, I hate that name. That name has done us a bit of damage in the past. Burgoyne was just incredible. It's unbelievable. He is the size of a twig and plays like an absolute beast, and he's very, very, very good. And I think with between those players, you've got like high skill sets, good runners, and really clever with the ball. Those are the kind of players that are going to be really dangerous. I think we match up one-on-one with a lot of players. I think one-on-one within some of the players that we do have, I think we've got a good chance. But when you start throwing in some creativity, making our heads fall off the swivel a bit, it turns into a totally different game, mate. I think that's really where the danger comes in.
Yeah, and obviously a big talking point of the game, other than the fact that Port schooled Hawthorn in their own game, as in like smashing them in the contested possessions and ground ball gets, as Jen already said, was the fourth time that Hawthorn in the whole season had lost the ground ball get count. But the biggest talking point was obviously the Guinea, Hinkley, Sicily showdown, whatever you want to call it. But what did you guys make of that? A non-issue, right?
Non-issue. Like
20,000 for just a
Look.
suck shit, mate. Like, come on. It's a bit steep, isn't it?
20,000 for a suck shit, mate. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is ridiculous. I can't even remember. There was someone afterwards, a couple of days after, everyone was like, oh, he shouldn't have done that. He's a grown man. You don't talk to a player after they've lost and stuff like that. I'm like, it wasn't aggressive, as they mentioned. It wasn't that crazy. And, it is finals footy. Everyone talks about that. Everyone's got a bit of heat up. You've just had a game. You've fought to the very end. They did have a chance to snatch it. They didn't quite get it. Ken Hinkley has been under a lot of pressure. There's just a lot of testosterone in the house, which is absolutely fine. My testosterone levels on the field used to go through the roof sometimes as well. So I've been known for a little bit of push and shove here and there. So, non-issue.
Yeah,
it should. I think I'll say this much about it. I think it's I think it's particularly silly because look, I'm gonna step back a little bit because I do feel Hinkley I don't think he should have been fined. I think everyone's made a big meal out of it. But if that was Horse, I would be disappointed in him. You know what I mean? Like, just like, pull yourself back, mate. Like, what are you doing screaming at the other players for? Leave that on the field. That's the only thing. So, I mean, it's been well documented, my annoyance at Port's existence generally. But I just think it was just silly that we even find him. Like, let him have at it. And the fact that they're just suggesting that Guinea is like this poor little junior child that just doesn't know, like, oh, poor kid, you don't ruin his like emotions or anything. The guy is the biggest smack talker in the world. He does it on the pitch. He does it off the pitch. He does it all the time. Good on him. And it does make the game exciting sometimes. But at the same time, he needs to take it. And so, whatever. 20 grand, sure. Throw it into the coffers. The guys at HQ are going to have some beers with that at the Christmas party. That's effectively what that's for.
Exactly. So he shouldn't have done it, but I don't think it's worth 20 grand.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it was all the ex-Hawthorn club that were arcing up, and the irony of Sam Mitchell and the way that he'd get under the skin of opposition teams, and also Clarko. Do we need to mention Clarko and his aggressive,
even getting into the opposition of a under 16s team or whatever? Like, come on, the guy's a grub, and then Hodgie as well, having 2 cents in it. Get out of here, mate.
Oh, come on, Hodgie, come on, mate. We know you're supposed to have played a bit of time with Brisbane as well, but really the brown and gold was shining through there. And look, good on him. Good on Port for using that as motivation. And, Hinkley is an emotional character. He's been under a lot of stress, as you said. But I think you're right, Chris. You can't imagine Horse doing that. And but I mean, he doesn't always coach from the bench, right, on the ground. So whereas Hinkley's always down there, right? It's usually him and Fagan and a couple of others that are proponents of that. So you're kind of avoiding it if you're up in the box. Unlike the Jason McCartney physical contact, I thought that was a bit extreme, 20K. But then this, war of words, who cares? But anyway, we're here, we're there, it's done. Port go through, we play Port, and I think Kane Corns has already called Hawthorn for 2025 flag. That's going to be interesting, but we'll see how we go there. I think in terms of injuries, the main one I noticed for Port was Todd Marshall. So he had that. He had sort of a head knock and went out and was cleared and went back on, but then had a follow-up one, which I guess speaks to Port's medical procedure, because it wasn't Alir that was allowed to play on, and he was actually concussed, and then they got fined again, 20 grand for that. But
yeah, it was illegal. He got absolutely cleaned up. It was clear as day to everyone that ever watched any of that footage from like thousands of miles away. We saw exactly how that happened, and surprise,
So
just did it again.
Yeah, surprise. So he's a definite out, and we'll go through ins and outs in more detail soon. But I think he was the only. I mean, you mentioned Horn Francis. Did you see something there, Chris? Oh, I wasn't aware of the hammy. Did he go out with a hamstring?
Yeah, like he not that he came off. He did come off for a little while. Sorry, one sec. Danny's making it. Sorry, babe. Can you... Yeah, it did seem like he was really propped up pretty badly. I think he came off the ground a couple of times, and then one of the last times he got like walked off by the trainers as well. So he was in a bad way towards the end of that. So it was definitely just a hammy. He just suggested, I think he had an interview in the car park, like a couple of days after or so, maybe it might have been yesterday, just about how he felt, and he's just like, oh yeah, just a hammy, it's all good. But I was actually talking to Danny, my fiance, about it at the time. I'm just like, the guy's clearly lying. He's just touching his face as he's talking about how good his hammy is, despite it being like clearly frozen up on the day and pinged up pretty badly. So I think that's a bit of a show to come. I think I don't know how quickly some of these hammy injuries can go, Jen. What do you think?
Well, I was actually really surprised in that Geelong game as well that he wasn't ever starting. He always came on afterwards. He was like the replacement mid, if you will, like playing the second half of each quarter. And I said it in our conversation as well of why aren't they starting with him? He's such their like star power burst player. It's almost like they want to catch up, and in that Geelong game they didn't. So if they want to do that again for this weekend, we're absolutely happy with that. Don't start with Jason Horn-Francis. Keep him on the sideline, manage that hamstring as long as he possibly can each quarter. If not for the whole game, he can be managed. So hammies, if it's one of the neural hammies, sometimes you can manage it, but hamstrings tend to come back and get worse until you actually take time off and fix it. But maybe he's hoping to push to the finals and then deal with it later, but I don't know. Interesting.
Well, it'd be a big out if, as you say, I'd really love that one. But just rounding that out, obviously we've touched on Burgoyne, Rioli, Horn-Francis, and a lot of their other, especially their mids. George Yard is their leading goal kicker this year. I think it was on 43. He kicked 3-2 against the Hawks. And then their big, I want to say big four mids, Wines, Rosie, Butters, Drew, had 10, 9, 8 and 8 tackles respectively for the game, which is massive. So that's obviously something we'll need to be aware of. But in terms of Port Adelaide is our current bogey team. As Chris has already touched on in the intro, our previous bogey team was the Pies, but it is firmly sitting with Port at the moment. So in terms of the past record, we have lost, and I'll just tee off with this if you don't mind. We have lost the past 8 games, so 8 consecutive years of losses to Port. That's home and away. The last time we won was in 2016, in the year that we should have won the flag. Rigged! So we won 67 points in round 20 against Port, right? And then the rest is history, and I talk about it every other day. But we lost 8 games to Port. We lost 5 away and 3 at home. However, in the last 6, only one of those has been at the SCG. So just over to you guys, and we'll start with Chris, if that's all right. Like, how do you feel about the bogey concept and Port being a bogey team and where we are right now?
One thing you might gauge about the podcast and me generally is that I'm not a big there's obviously a lot of emotions that draw into a game, but I'm not a big proponent of a bogey team or a weird outlying statistic because this team is slightly better than us. I think it's just game to game. I truly do treat it game to game. And I think game styles is really what we'll be talking about. And I don't think Port has necessarily had a game style, like a culture of a particular type of game style. I think that's changed frequently as the as a personnel change. So for me, maybe it's just thrown out to me. I guess Noddy is a bit of a bad one because I don't believe in that. I don't believe in a bogey team. I don't believe that there is a team that we are failing to win against because of a particular reason. I think it's just purely because the game on that weekend just didn't go our way, or we didn't play the way we wanted to play. Just losing the last game, I know we've touched on it before and we're going to touch on it again. The last game we played against them early this season, big drubbing by them. It was not necessarily to do with the way that they were playing. It was mostly to do with the way that we played on the day, the way that we didn't show up, the way that we were preparing, the way that our training regime was going. That's really where my mind is sitting. Jen, I don't know how you feel, if you feel any different than that.
Crusoe is laughing in the face of a global
history.
phenomenon. I love this of just...
I
So,
know.
Jen, over to
I
you,
laugh in
Jen.
many faces.
I know.
Yeah.
You've just like said all of the stats. You're like, it's been 8 consecutive years. We've only won one of those in the last 6 encounters. So it is hard to not think of them as the bogey team. So we'll disagree on that one a little bit. And they were the team this year I'd been feeling nervous about. I mean, we have to talk about that last game, unfortunately, 148-36. I wish we could forget about it, but we were just so lackluster on that day. It just seemed to be in that point of the season that players looked tired. We'd been talking about maybe Grundy needed to be rested, Warner to be rested. Just a couple of players just looked so heavy in the legs, and it just looked like they... bit complacent, I would say, is the big thing. We'd almost definitely booked our spot in the final 4, and so it just felt like they didn't actually go out there and play with all of their heart and might in that game. They just played it out, and I don't know, but it does seem that they have our number a little bit. There are certain players across the park who seem to know how to play on us well, or play us out of the game, whether or not that's mental or physical or a little bit of both. I don't know. I'm saying this is in the past because this is not going to happen this weekend. We'll get into this a little bit later with our matchups and how we reckon we're going to beat them. But my big thing, I know you just said you don't think they have a game style. I think in the last maybe 2-3 years they have changed their game style around, and I think they like to play a bit like we like to play. They look for the corridor. They want that run and carry. They want to get it in. They probably want to get it in a bit faster than what we do, but generally speaking, their tools have been taking those marks inside 50. You talk about Georgiades. I don't know what's happening with Dixon, whether he's in, whether he's out for this next game. I guess we'll find out going forward, but when he's on, big Charlie Dixon, give me a effer, a fucker, a motherfucker, a total handful. And so they've got their tools are taller than ours. Their backs seem to have our number. I wish we never lost Illyria. He seems to have flourished at Port, but good on him that he has. We've got to do something about him. We can't let him, just float in behind the ball and take those intercept marks or come in late for the spoils. We've got to body him out of the game. He doesn't like to be bodied. He's got a long reach, so the further away or the earlier we can do our work on him, the better. So, yeah, our past we're about to put behind us on Friday. See you later, bogey team.
I like it. We've got contrasting views there on the bogey team there. But, yeah, so if we go back to I think it was, if we just compare the team that beat the Giants to the team that got flogged by Port in round 20. Oh, sorry, whenever it was, round 21 or something like that. Round 0's thrown everything out.
Round 21. Yep.
21. Thank you. There were, I think it was off the top of my head, five differences. So Fox, who obviously we'll talk about, is potentially in line to come back in for Mills, but it was Fox, Francis, Adams, Wicks, and Laddams, I believe. No?
Yep.
Yeah, is that right?
Yep.
And was Corey there? Maybe Corey was even in there.
I think Corey maybe came on as a super sub.
We were going to give him 6 points, I recall, because he was the one that did the least amount of damage on the day. Yeah,
that's right. So if we just think about that, that's the team that won against the Giants is closer to our best team, right? Best 23. We'd obviously had the the flat loss against the Dogs the week before to the tune of 39. We mixed it up and it just didn't work. But with closer to our best team on the field, and two of those were sort of returning from, long layoffs, we all saw the game. We were there. We were, it was an amazing finish, obviously. I think that says something. I think that's closer to, we're a different team. The style, the game strategy might still be there. They might still have one up us on that. But in terms of personnel, I think we've got a little bit of an advantage there. In terms of the last time we've lost against Port at the SCG, if you remember, it was early in 2023, round 4, when we lost by 2 points with Ollie Florent falling just short. I think Elias spoiled it actually on the goal, in the goal square on the goal line, but we lost by 2 points there. So that's the only loss at the SCG we've had in the last 6 years. So I think coming to a home prelim with a team that's closer to our full strength, and again, there were 5 different players on that day. Stevens, Buddy, oh God, this is testing you. Can you remember who played that day? What the differences are? Question without Mose. Stevens, Buddy, Laddams played that day. Paddy McCartan was in, and Fox. So a bit of overlap there. Yep. But so look, I think we can sort of read into it. We can not read into it. I'm a bit more aligned with how Jen thinks that they do for one reason or another have our measure. And it's something we need to break. And then that's where I kind of come onto Chris's line of thought of thinking where, it's got to end eventually. Maybe it's not there, maybe just not good enough on that individual day. Not buying into the nonsense of the concept. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting nonetheless. And frightening at the same time.
Yeah.
But
we try to draw lines to our emotions, I think, with all of this, and that's fair. That's a lot of the times emotions aren't logical, and that's the whole point of them. Like, you cannot describe them. We're trying to draw lines between like successes that we've had and non-successes. And if we're trying to put distance between what happened earlier this season and now, we're going to find ways to do that. I think it just comes down to the type of play that we have, the game style that we have, and then just momentum we're carrying into that game. And of course, the freaking home ground final at the ACG. I think those are going to be really big driving points for us.
Well, that's a good segue, I think, in terms of game style. The next thing we're going to talk about is obviously the good, the bad, and the ugly for Port, and the same for us. So, Jen, do you want to kick off there with your thoughts on Port?
Yep, I've got the 3 for Port, so the good, the bad, the ugly. When Port are good, they're very good. They're electric. I've said it already, especially through that middle part of the ground, and Georgiadis has proved himself up front. Dixon can prove himself up front. You've got the smalls of Rioli, who, as you said, was probably best on ground last weekend, and then Darcy Byrne-Jones, who's defender gone forward, and he is being damaging actually up front this year. And then you've got Mini Silk on the wing. So I know you don't want to say Burgoyne, but yeah, when they're bad, they can get the yips. I think we bring it back to, if we don't let them get that run on, don't let them get that outside run and carry, they don't actually like it. Your Rosies and your Butters is a bit stronger, but Rosie, he likes to be that outside player. If you can shut him down, don't let him get a run. Same as Alir, doesn't really like to be touched. He can get pushed out of the game. God, I've just forgotten his name. He's forward. He came across some Cats. He's now with Port. Same thing. Radigalia. He can take some great marks, but if he doesn't and he misses to begin with, he often misses for the rest of the day. Said it. So they can crumble if they don't get the ball how they want to get the ball. The ugly, obviously, once we start putting pressure on them, if we can get them to kick high to a pack, gives us more of a chance to stop them getting clean balls into the forward 50. Unfortunately, I feel like sometimes when Port gets ugly, they start to also get ugly as well, and there's a bit more off the ball antics. So yeah, let's keep pushing them wide and make them lose their heads.
Good call, Chris. So good, bad, no ugly for the Swannies.
Look, I think the good is just the strong finishing. It's been well documented. We only have to look back one game ago just to see how much of an impact that can make. And we know throughout the year that it's just been an enormous part about what the Swans can do, just their creativity, strong finishing, really, really fit bunch of guys who can run for most of the game. I think where we're bad is just I don't think we can score enough from the tours up forward. And I don't think this is necessarily a problem throughout the year. I think it's just a problem of recent standing. But at the same time, when we haven't had the danger players to be able to attack the ground, the tours, they're kind of forced to have to be a lot more. And when you can play against, if you're a defender playing against the tour forward and they're having to, if you will, focus on the mark and they just get the ball to ground, when the ball hits the ground and there's no one there to pick it up, then it's not a dangerous forward entry. And I think we found that way too many times in the past. So I think our forward line with Papley coming back in and potentially a couple of others that we'll talk about in the selection part, I think that's going to be a lot better. And I think our bad is kind of going to be nullified with a bit of entry, just being a bit more dangerous when we hit that forward line. Ugly wise, let's be clear, let's be honest. We've spoken about it all year long, multiple times with multiple bevies. It's got to be our starts. Our starts are horrendous. We need to get better at them. I think it was Steve-O mentioned on the chat, mate. Noddy, did you record this? I think it was like 3 weeks in or 4 weeks in, where he's like, at some point they're going to realize you can't win a grand final by having slow starts. And we've gotten close. We've gotten really, really close to losing those games. So it's important for us to start getting off to a hot start. And I don't think, I'm not saying hot, but we've got to start turning up round one. Sorry. We've got to start turning up for the first quarter. And for me, that just puts a lot of lack of pressure in the back end. And I think consistent, we've always finished strong. We have done for the last couple of years. And this year more so even than last year. So we've got a lot of fit guys and we can do it, but we just got to we don't necessarily have to put that amount of pressure on ourselves is where I stand.
I'm going to tie in both of your comments there about Port and Swans, especially when it comes to scoring. So in terms of scoring, they are 5th for inside 50s. This is in league rankings, and we're 8th. But we are 1st for goal efficiency. So we make the most of our opportunities when we go forward, and they're 14th. And this ties into Jen's point. Their shot at goal accuracy is the worst in the comp. They're 18th, and we're 6th. So there's a bit to that. Obviously, there's a few other stats that you read into there. I think disposal efficiency comes into it, but then there's also, you're looking at highest goals per game. So we're 2nd on 14.2 and 4th for behinds, 11.8, whilst Port is 12th for goals on 12.1 and 2nd on behinds, 13.1 respectively. So I think it sort of overlapped both of your comments there. But yeah, in terms of I think, this goes back to game style, but sort of touches on good, bad and ugly as well. They are 1st in tackles per game in the league and 2nd in tackles inside 50 per game. And we are 11th and 15th respectively.
Yep.
But we are 1st in 1%ers and they're 3rd. So either way you look at it, hopefully it's going to be a very, very tight, high pressure game. But as Chriso said, it just feels like we really have to start well this game.
Yep.
More than any.
And especially you said in that past game with Hawthorn, all of those midfielders, the amount of tackles they did in there to want to lock it in, they obviously really hunt for the ball. And we show signs of that. We saw it in the 4th in so many of our games that we've got the hunt for the ball. But yeah, this is a finals game. You're going to have that hunt from the very beginning. And we've got the skills. As you say, we're number 1 for those pressure outs. I'd rather have those 1%ers, which some of those might be corralling or harassing or cranging and seen as 1%. Make that a tackle. Don't let it go any further. Shut it down at the spot. So.
Definitely. In terms of team changes and predicted lineups, we've sort of floated a few ideas already, but really in terms of last game's ins and outs, obviously super sub. Oh, sorry. Jen, do you want to? I'll pass over to you. Sorry, I was on pilot mode there.
Yeah, that is all good. I mean, you guys spoke about it last week after the game. You, Sam, and Julie, the super sub. He came on like a man possessed. Campbell, I watched it back. I just watched the fourth quarter back again today, and he was involved in everything. Like at the very end of the game, he kicked his own ball and chased it down. I don't know how many touches he actually got in that last quarter, but that's what we need. We want someone who wants his position, and he's just so gorgeous with his red rosy cheeks. He just wants to do the team thing. He's got the bloods in his cheeks. He's just a bloods man. I just want him out there. I think he's proved himself. He's done enough. Absolutely agree. Moving on. Fox for Mills, I think. Agree with you and Sammy and Jules last week. He's proved himself in the past in finals. He does a lot of those 1%ers. I reckon he's got to be up there with one of the highest in the whole league for the amount of smothers he does. He just always seems to get there, do those extra little 1%ers. He's versatile. You can play him anywhere around the park. Possible ins and outs. I think for me, we've been speaking about this for the last couple of weeks as well, about the Amadi party. I don't feel like he's having much of a party of late, even though he did get that final goal last week. I'm just still not convinced. I know we're going to talk about maybe he could have a role on Aaliyah and being a defensive forward and basically just defend Aaliyah out. But in terms of, it's just not putting that scoreboard pressure on, taking the marks, the relieving marks we need sometimes down the wing. Yes, sometimes he does bring it to ground, but I'm still a bit convinced even that last goal he got might have been a slight mistake. He didn't quite bump the player off. But then Papley had 3 on him, so he had to give him back the ball.
He couldn't do it all.
I was like, oh my God. And even on that, it's like, how many times did Papley bring a ball to ground 2-on-1? Massively undersized. That's our tall's job. That's not Papley's job. Pappy is to be the one to get that ball from the toes, and our tools are not doing that. I'd almost bring in Cleary. I'm putting it out there. I think every game that he's played, even if it's been a short amount of time, he has, again, like Campbell, he wants it. He wants that ball so much. He wants that spot. He runs and chases. He tackles. He's put some goals on the board. And maybe we just need that extra small in there if the ball's going to be coming to ground more, because it is a final. There's going to be more pressure. But just as long as they don't just 100% intercept from us, we've got to at least contest. Anyway, and I think I only put one in there. I know there's a little contention as well, and the chat about Adams and Parker Parker disappearing a bit in that last game. But for me, still 100% Parker, 100% Parker loyalist. He did have his moments in the fourth, and I think he is a finals player and is better
than Adams. Yeah,
than Adams.
Comparing those, if it comes down to it, it's Parker every day, right?
Yeah.
I don't like. I understand it's really sad what happened with him with Collingwood, but why do we have to take that experience, that baggage here? We don't really owe him anything. I think he's had a good year, like 19 games, and he's played a really good role. But if he's not in the best team, he's not in the best team. We shouldn't. But he can definitely still come in and still play. Like, he's got finals experience. He's played really well in finals. So if he comes in, he comes in and hopefully he plays well. But Chriso, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think like he's still probably got a role to play, right? So I think we didn't necessarily get him in just because we didn't foresee the situation we're going to be in. We didn't necessarily foresee. We actually foresaw that Parker was going to be in the team the entire year. So we already had a role in mind with Parker being in the game the whole time. I think that's what a lot of fans are forgetting, that they're imagining it was a one-on-one. It was never a one-on-one. We thought Parker was going to be in the ground the whole year, and we still got Adams because of what he could give and what the potential he could give us across all different parts of the ground. And that's what I still feel that he has opportunity to give that to us. That's what I really want to say there. And you never know what's going to happen with him. I think he might be a big part of it.
Who do you think he would replace?
I think that's a really great question. I think the emergence of guys like Cleary and Campbell, solidifying themselves in the role, I think is a big part of it. I think Foxy Foxy kind of has been a bit injured in parts of the year and he's not been able to play his true self. And we know how good he can be, and especially 2012, the job he did on Cameron. Like, let's just remember that, like, incredible. But he's also getting on in years. So I think for Adams, like, what we have is just this incredible guy who could pretty much slide into a lot of places off the ground and do a pretty qualified job of doing it. And we're very happy to have them. We're gifted to have it, and that's just good. That's just good trade in. So leave it. I think
that was the most like a politician's response from you I've ever heard.
Well,
we had a question and you just skirted around the answer.
Well, I think that's the point. Is that I wouldn't put him in for anyone right now. But at the same time, he still may end up in the field because you don't know what's going to happen between now and Friday. Is my point.
Does Juzzy hold?
I don't think so. I don't think
so. I think Fox in for Mills for the versatility and the track record, and Campbell comes in the 22 just in a heartbeat. It's whether Juzzy holds the sub, I think.
Was Juzzy? It was purely just fitness. Like he didn't make any impact on the game. Like like first game back, especially after what happened. Like everyone, like you have to know how much of a massive fan of Juzzy I am. I'm his biggest fan.
And I think Horse too. Yeah. I think Horse is going to back him in, and that's why I think Adams is probably going to miss out. Jen, is that your read?
Well, yeah, I think in the past I've heard Dean Cox say somewhere along the lines that Juzzy is actually someone they put on the field when they need something done. He's like, we can put him out there. He's got the confidence. He's got the skills. He reads the game well. But, yeah, definitely in that last game, he just did look a little undercooked or maybe a little bit. When you have had an injury, it's always slightly there in the back of your mind and you're not going at 100%. So whether or not he was slightly undercooked, but yeah, definitely in the past, massive fan of Juzzy as well. He does, he covers the ground. He's such a great wing. I think he's just, wing is always, I always say, the hardest position to play because you're forward, you're back, you're mid, you're everywhere. And then you're obviously the outlet player, and then sometimes you got to go kick those goals. So if you're undercooked and having to run that much, it's tough. If it was a straight for straight, and if he is a little under, Campbell's in for me over Juzzy. That's what.
The thing that alleviates all these, possible scenarios is that if we choose to go only two talls up front, then there's a spot for everyone. Adams comes in. It's either Adams or Cleary at that point, I think. But it'd be a big call. It's a good point, Noddy, and I agree with you. But I don't see Horse changing the recipe that he's stuck to through the entire year. I think we all like, probably not going to happen. But I think on a theoretical basis, yes. But Horse is just wants his structure, and I think that's a Marty's going to stick.
Yeah, he's stubborn. I agree with you. I don't think it's actually going to change. It's just
stubborn like a horse. You're saying,
Yeah, can't take him to water, unfortunately, can we?
I like it. So let's just quickly talk about Port. So they've got a bunch of starting players, all Australians really, out. Chriso, talk us through Port, or who's out and who is potentially due to come back in.
Houston, huge out, massive. I mean, he's out because he just decided to clean up. God, who was it that he just absolutely ripped apart? Rankin, that's right. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, in effectively a nothing game, good work. Like, just my God. Anyway, he's out. I think that's just a huge hole for them. He's again, when you start talking about Paul, you start talking about some of the classy usage, hardworking, and he's exactly that. And he's going to be like that for a long time. And so he's a massive out for them. And you've also got Kane Farrell out. It's kind of weird. It's one of those weird ones where everyone's saying he's probably not playing because his hammy's done, but then the club's saying he's done for sure, which means I don't believe him. The same club that has Koshi at the top of the ticket is the team that I'm going to be believing. I don't believe him, so I'm not 100% certain that he's actually sitting out. But either way, apparently he's been given all opportunity to get back in. So that's a back line that's actually a decent back line that's actually been smashed a bit by some very, very one incredible elite player and one very, very good player. So I think the back line for them, I think, is a bit of a sore point. And as we've spoken about as well, we've got Dixon losing out because of what we understand is a flu. This is not COVID anymore, so we don't talk about it anymore. We don't care about COVID. We just move on with life, right? So
Is this
fine.
avian? What are we calling?
Are we avian?
the flu these days?
We're probably going to go in circles again. Yeah, it could be the plague all over again. I don't know.
Dixon's got the bubonic plague.
If any bloke's going to get it, it's that bloke. It's just a monster. But Todd Marshall, as you said, like knocked out Cole. So I think there's actually, and what we mentioned there about Horn Francis just kind of popping up pretty hard in the last game. I think they're coming in a bit sore. And I don't necessarily think that they have that kind of depth to be able to. We don't. The Swans don't necessarily have the depth to fill in that many positions. Finlayson's out because I think was he from a knee or something or
Spleen.
What? Spleen.
Yeah, that's what I've got listed.
Favour the other spleen.
Yeah,
just favour the other spleen is not a problem. So
because he was one of their leading goal kickers, I think, last year. Like he was dominant.
Yeah.
So the fact you haven't heard his name for a while is a big key of it. I think. So I just don't think they have the depth to fill in some of these guys.
Sam Powell Pepper as well, man. Sam Powell Pepper.
That's right.
Missing one of their acronyms.
Yeah.
That's right.
So they're big outs, aren't they? Farrell, Finlayson, Houston, and Powell Pepper.
Yep.
That's 4 big outs. And the other one was Burton. He was a laid in, I think for Houston, but then he was a laid out last game against Hawks because of a calf. So if he comes back in, I think that and him and Farrell coming back in really bolsters their back line, I think, because they're using a fair few youngsters back there. We're going to go through the teams in a moment, but yeah, look, I think it's going to be interesting. We're not overly tall. They're not overly tall also, although, yeah, I don't know if both teams are necessarily fleet of foot, like they don't have that mosquito fleet forward pack that maybe the Cats are running at the moment, but anyway, that's probably a good segue. So should we go line by line? Who are the danger players for Port? We're looking at defence, mid and forward, Jen.
Oh, I think I read these lines wrong. I think there's a two-way here, but
okay, yeah, go with that. Go with what you've got. Yep.
Port's defence, obviously, Alir. We've spoken about him. He loves an intercept. He's got such a long reach. He does like to play off his players and come in late and either take the spoil or the mark. So we need to nullify him. I think we saw last game as well. Burton has taken over from Dan Houston and took a big long-range kick from outside the 50. He's got the quick hands of Rioli, so he's a danger. Burgoyne seems to be quick, as you said. He looks like a twig, but he plays like a rock. And then Bergman. So there's some players still in there, but I think we should have them covered, especially with that extensive injury list. I didn't know about a few of those out, so that helps us massively. The next line I did have was for us, our Sydney defenders. I'm ready for McCutton to come back in and have a big one. I reckon he's been a little bit quiet these last couple of weeks. We're so used to him doing exactly what Alir does, takes those intercepts. He always goes for the intercepts, but the last couple of games he's been doing his job mostly and spoiling, but it hasn't been at his best, back to his best just yet. I'm waiting for that. I think Cunningham's probably going to have the job on Rioli, either Cunningham or Ollie. Probably Cunningham is quicker. And then, Rampy's just the boss. So whoever he goes to, he's going to give them a headache. He can play tall, he can play short. I think he'd probably go to Darcy Burt-Jones, but he probably wraps around into whoever's the next, who is the most dangerous mid-size forward, whether or not that's when. If Jason Horne-Francis plays and if he rolls up front, probably Rampy goes to him. So, yeah, we've got our defenders. Port's mids, they're danger players. To be honest, all of them, Rosie, Butters, Horne-Francis, the ruck, Sweet. He's pretty good, but again, if we do what the Cats did to him, don't let him get the run and jump, he gets nullified. He doesn't like the contact either, and he's got his legs and arms strapped up all on one side, so he looks pretty bashed up as well. And then there's the experience of Wines and Boak, so they don't have as much impact anymore, but they can lift when they're needed. So we've got our hands tied.
Full, yeah, Boki's silk. Chris, over to you for Sid mid, Port forward, Sid forward.
Yeah, so Sydney mids, I think, just touching where Jen left it there with Sweet. I think I agree with Jen. I think he looks pretty banged up as well. He was absolutely flopping towards the end of that last game. He's very much gas. It's a long season, and he looks banged up. And I think him against a well-rested Grunzilla is going to be a sight to behold. I am backing Grundy to really get a hold of him. I think he's going to be pretty dangerous in those tap outs. And look, just a rested midfield generally, I think they've just been working pretty hard, and we just know how the heroic efforts of Heaney. He just probably needs a week off just to admire how much of an insane bloke he is, and then get out there and do it all again for another week. So let's see where he ends up. Port forwards, I think it's such a funny one with Port because they can score, but it just comes here and there. Just as Jen mentioned, Noddy, you were backing it up with the stats there. It just comes, it doesn't come in droves. It just happens very inorganically almost. So you can kind of hold them up a fair bit. Georgiadis just had an absolute field day. But if I recall correctly, I think Sicily went up forward at that point because we're talking about the game last week, of course, because they were up there and they're having to score goals to get the game up. So Georgiadis is dangerous, and I think we just get our danger man one on him. Melican, I think, could do a pretty good job on him as well. So he's got a bit of speed as well, and good for age. Sydney forward line, this is where we need to lift. This is what I was saying before. I think our forward line needs to lift, and I think headed up by Amadi. We've spoken a fair bit about it already. Amadi and Aaliyah battle, we presume that's going to happen just because Amadi's kind of got the best in the air on typical sense. Just got to play. Amadi just needs to get on his bike. Can't sit there and expect that he's going to be able to jump at a ball and be able to take that mark. He's got to run onto it, and he's got to sit up behind Aaliyah. Make Aaliyah swivel his head a bit. Make Aaliyah second guess himself. Make Aaliyah take the wrong run left and right, like laterally. I think that's really what we need Amadi to focus on. And we know Amadi can do it. He is a confidence player. He finished off the game. He won the game last week, and you can say how that happened. That's fine, but his kick got us to the lead. He needs to take that confidence into this game and just drive with it. We know he can play. We know he can. He's just going to turn up and he's going to turn it on. So, as Swans fans, you need to get behind Amadi. He can do it. He can do it. So let's just get behind him.
Yeah, and you'd hope that there's a bit of synergy there, obviously with Logan and Doss, and you kind of want them to be dragging their defenders out to give someone a bit of space, and so they can either have a clean clunk at it or bring it to ground like Jen called out earlier instead of Papley having to do that. But yeah, let's hope we can bring it together. We've touched on a few key matchups, but let's go through who we think the key matchups are going to be. And I've listed a few there. I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but these are a few that I came up with. We can roll with them or not. Horne-Francis, JJ, Butters, Chad, Drew, Goulden, Amadi Ali, we've just touched on, Chriso, T-Mac, Dixon, I think someone had a call out earlier, and Cunners Rioli, I think, Jen, you mentioned that. So, Jen, do you want to just tee off with whatever matchups you think or you're seeing?
Yeah, did see those lines, and I'm going to disagree with you on one of them.
Okay. Yep.
I actually think Rowie should go to Jason Horne-Francis when he comes in, just in terms of just that strength for strength. Obviously, JJ can run all day. He's got the speed, which could probably work with Jason Horne-Francis. But if we could stop him right at the start, I think Rowie, we know that he's a tackling machine. I think we need a bit more of a bull on Jason Horne-Francis. He's so strong. I would love to actually see Chad go in that, do the like for like, but we kind of need Chad for our team's explosive. Like Chad, when he is on, when he is excited, he does that for us. He's our bull. He runs through, he gets a run on, he palms off, he can be really explosive, and he just doesn't do the defensive stuff as much as the others, so we'll keep him for that. I'd maybe switch and put JJ on Butters, just for that outside run. Butters sometimes does play more on the wing. He does roll into the midfields as well, but that outside run. So I think JJ's got the engine and that pure tagging ability that we've seen again and again to hold him down. I think we'll see a big battle between Heaney and Rosie, and we all know that the Rolls Royce can bring it out whenever he can. So that'll be a battle of the silks, I think, those two, Heaney and Rosie. Down that third one that you said, Drew, on Goulden, yeah, imagine that's what's going to happen. He's done well in the past on tagging key players on the opposite team, so imagine that's going to happen. And then on the other wing, we'll probably have Lloydie and Boak battle it out on the other wing, but I think Lloydie's got him for speed.
Yeah, I was going to say,
how about you, Chris?
echo Jen's point, I think, on JJ. I think JJ on Butters is the way to go, depending on where he sets up. I think it's a little bit of like how they're faring as well. If Jason Horne-Francis is just screaming and his hammy's looking strong and he's flying around, I think obviously you need to slow him down, because he plays such a varied role, and he does actually, I think he's just been given a license to be able to move around when he wants it too. Yeah. So he's also a bit dangerous, a bit of a Goulden, you know. But generally, I think just in damage that they can do, I think sitting on Zach Butters, I think JJ, that'd be the place that I'd be leaning on him to do, and put something more defensive on JHF.
Yeah, you'd think there that if Houston were playing, JJ might go to Houston, because he's sort of had a lot of roles on that. Their most offensive defender. It sounds kind of a bit of a yeah, but with him out, you'd say it's probably going to be Butters or the Hornet. So yeah. How about Chris? How about your other ones there? You want to go into those again?
I think the only one that I want to highlight is Cunners on Rioli. As we've said, that's going to be a really interesting one. Cunners does have the capacity to really shut down blokes. I think Brett Daniels last week is an example of that. Did he play? Apparently he did, but Cunners also played and he shut him down. So I think what we want to see is chalk and cheese. We want to see the damage that Rioli did last week against Hawthorn, and we want to see the damage that Cunners can do to Rioli this week and really shut him down and not let him have so much time. I mean, he doesn't need a lot of time, but he just needs a little bit of lack of pressure in order to make the damage. Go watch the game back against the Hawks. Like, he had no one within 5-10 meters of him, and he was nailing these kicks. And these are hard kicks to nail, but he still needs a little bit of space. He needs to not worry about someone about to tackle him. And I think that's what Cunners can do to damage. I think he's got the speed to keep up with him easily. That's really, I think, a massive game of our side, and just really put a hitch in their giddy up when we're talking about going forward for the forward line.
Yeah, 100%. He just had so many score involvements as well, Rioli. Like, he's little chip kicks, or he looks like he's looking one way and then he brings it back inside. And Cunners, he's just so good at shutting people down. He wears them. He wears them like a t-shirt. So
a fantastic second half to Rioli's career, really. I mean, he was such a gun at West Coast, and then went through a few personal issues there for a while, and he's come back better than ever. And he's just good at footy, isn't he? He's just a good footy player. He's so smart. Yeah. He's so much skill. So he really is a key player.
Yeah, I mean, family.
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable,
Jesus
isn't it?
Christ.
Losing a position in an AFL club for having a bit of weed on you, I think that's a bit unfair, because but either way, he just rebuilt himself over in a new club and is just dominating. So good on him. Yeah.
All right. Here's the big question, and we've dabbled throughout, but how do we win? Jen?
Yeah. I think you know where I'm going. We need to win it at the coalface. You need to win it straight from that middle patch of the ground. Get it in early as well. Give our tools a genuine one-on-one chance. So if we're handballing it a few times and you're not sure when you're going to lead, when you're going to go, it can make it really hard for ourselves. Don't let that ruck get a run and jump on it. if we can do that instead, like Grundy, as you said, Grundinator, I think he's going to come out. He did it in the fourth in that last game. He just took it upon himself to get that ball out into space. The amount of times he roundhoused it and got it going forward, amazing. I mean, it's better if you can do the finesse taps if you are dominant in that ruck and you know where that ball's going to come down to and you can use your plays. But yeah, a little bit more grit. We've said it again and again from our tools. I've seen so many games where they're standing off their defender. Just get in there, get a bit aggressive, get some body work on, push off them, create some separation, and then that way you might get a few clunks in the forward 50s. We've seen them do it before, like Logan's takes some amazing marks, the Dost can take some amazing marks. We know they have it in them. If our tall 3, let's say it's going to stay with the 3, if they can start putting scoreboard pressure on, as well as our Heenies and, who knows, maybe we'll get another back goal from the Lizard or our 250 gamer. But if we start getting goals from a number of players, not just from the midfielders and our mid-sized forwards, we are going to damage them. We're going to take that lightning off their jersey and rip out the thunder. That's what we're going to do.
Take off the Pies jersey off them.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Jen. I think that last point in particular, I think just damaged them up forwards. Like we really need to put hurt on them going up forward and then from multiple angles. We do have multiple ways to score. We only look at their stat lines of how many goals they're scoring. Like Geordie Argis has 43. Next down is Rioli with 32. Like we've got Amadi, Hayward both on 40, Logan on 35, Chad on 32, Papley on 32, Heaney on 31. There is multiple ways to score from the Swannies, and that's what we need to head with it. Keep them guessing, hit them from many angles, and really make them have to defend super hard and give ourselves that space to do it. So I think a big part of our game plan is also going to be the change of pace. We're going to be going up forward really, really hard. We're going to be trying to hammer them up on the scoreboard from the mids. Just when they start to ease up the mids, then we need the tools to start clunking those marks and change the speed of the game and give them many looks at the forward line. I think that's a big game for us.
Yeah, just swivel the head. We looked at those a few times in that last game as well. We know how they like to play. They want the corridor, but don't always just look to the corridor. There's a few times like look long, swivel the head around, get it moving. I think I'm so excited for this weekend. I think we've got it. Oh my God,
Friday night. Cheers.
Well, I think we've given the preview a pretty good shake here, team. So very good work. Before we go, we've got a few points to touch on. Jen?
Oh, yes. It's Rampy's 250th game. What an absolute... Woo! Rampy! Let's get the rampaging bull out there. Yeah, absolute legend of the game. One of my all-time favourites. Said it earlier. Plays tall, plays small, can be quick, reads the game so well. He always plays with heart. As long as he doesn't climb the goalpost, would be great. If he gets another goal, we'll be pretty happy about it. Players often step up in their milestone games. We know he does it again and again and again. He's done it consistently over his whole career. And since he's been back in that back six, it's just been so much better. It's been so much more controlled. We started coming up when he was there. So come on, Rampy, let's bring it home.
Awesome. Well said. What a player. What a clubman, and what a story. He's really just quite remarkable, isn't it? If you think about like not taking four drafts in a row and just stuck at it, and here he is, 250, just one of the absolute legends of our club. So, yeah, all the best for Rampy, and well done, mate. Chriso, over to you.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to say is I'm just pumped about the game. Let's just get on with it. This Friday, we're actually going to be the Bevy, Noddy and I, and a few of us are all going to be at the Clock in Surrey Hills, preparing for the game and trying to get out of those little nerves out of our systems by just having a nice chat with some fellow Swans fans. So if you are in the area and you so happen to be at the Clock, then by all means come upstairs. We'll be there with a little bit of a crew. It'll just be nice to catch up with everyone as we're there. So the Clock, Surrey Hills, from about what time we're going to be there, Noddy? Like 4:35?
Yeah, 4:35ish, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do have jobs, but it's going to be hard to do work, as we mentioned earlier. So we're going to have to get there a bit early to just start getting some of these cobwebs out. Because, so the clock, Surrey Hills, Friday, we'll see you all there.
Awesome. Well, Jen and Chris, that brings us to the end of this episode. And thanks to everyone for listening through right to the end. If you made it this far, it must mean we did something good.
So we'd love if you could give us a like or a follow in all your favorite socials, wherever they may be. Otherwise, keep an eye out for more content as we get closer to game day itself.
We look forward to you joining us next time. But until then,
Up the
bloods and
can you
Swannies!
Come on, Swannies. Here we go. One more. Come on.
Up the bloods!